Hello, welcome to Janome Club for this month, brought to you by Janome Australia. I'm one of the educators here, and today we are going to be talking about the Ruffler foot. The Ruffler foot is available for all 7 and 9 millimeter models. If you want to know which one to buy for your particular machine, please take your model name or number into your local Janome store, and they will be able to help you out with the correct part number that you need. So we're going to switch straight over to the foot, and I'm going to show you this contraption, we'll call it. It's one that I know sometimes some people look at it and think, what is that for? This is the Ruffler foot. It used to be called an ultimate ruffler if you've got an older packaging, and then also we have just the Ruffler. Like all our other feet, it does come with a little guide, normally with your packaging. If it comes in a box, you have a little paper note that you pull out. If it's a blister pack, it'll actually have it on the actual cardboard sheet that it comes, the backing sheet. And in here, it does explain to you how to do all the different settings of the foot and everything you need to know about using this foot. So with the Ruffler, you can do everything from tiny little gathers up to a ruffle, a pleat, with about a 6 mil-ish, thereabouts sort of depth. So the Ruffler attaches to the normal shank of your foot. So depending on which model you've got, there's either the 7 mil or the 9 mil, just clips onto your normal ankle on your machine. There is a screw adjustment at the back. I'll turn this around. So there is a screw adjustment at the back. That is just, will adjust where the actual foot is sitting, left or right, so that you can make sure your needle drop position is going right in between the little guide plate here. So that's what the screw at the back is for. At the front, we've got two different systems to tell you, depending on how often you want it to make the pleat and how deep you want to make the pleat. So on the top, we have a little ratchet system up here that has got a star, a 12, a 6, and a 1. So the 1 will do a pleat every 1 stitch. The 6 will do a pleat every 6 stitches, and the 12 will do a pleat every 12 stitches. So if you want your pleats to be close together, you would put it on the lower number. If you want them further apart, you would put it on the higher number. And if you do want to do, say, a section that's pleated or gathered, and then straight stitch only, and then pleated and gathered again, so like in the front of a skirt or the sides, you can put it on the little star, and that takes it out of the pleat. It won't do any pleats anymore. Then the little screw that is on the side of the foot, it has got a thread on it, and you've got a little numbers here. I think they go from 1 to 8. And that is like the depth of the actual pleat. So you screw it in smaller to get a smaller depth, or you take it out to get a larger depth. And the way this works is it works on the needle bar going up and down. So if I, this one going to work while I've got this one, my screen. Go. So it works on the needle bar going up and down, and it will press this forward and then back, forward and back, and that will make your little pleats. There's channels and guides on the foot to allow you to guide your fabric in, and you can do either a single layer or you can attach it to a flat piece as well. So here's a couple of just little examples of some of the amounts of pleating or gathers that you can do. All of these strips were the same, cut the same length. So this one here has got tiny little pleats very often. So I would imagine that would be set on 1 stitch and then on probably a deep pleat. Then we have the same sort of like amount of sort of pleating every stitch, but it's only a tiny little pleat. So the depth is how much fabric is pushed in under to make the actual pleat or gather. Then you can go all the way up to ones like this, where it is just a pleat every 12, I think this is a 12 or 6 stitches. And then you've got your little pleat, and then here's the one where it's every 12. So you can see that they're much further apart. If I take the one that's every 1 to every 12, so you can see there that that's the difference that it does with adjusting it. So we're going to go over to the machine now. Move all of this off. So you just want to use a straight stitch setting. If your machine has sewing applications with the optional feet, you may have a ruffler foot in there as a foot to choose, but it is just a straight stitch. Now, the one thing that you can get a little bit more adjustment in how many pleats it does at a time is with your stitch length, because it works on the number of stitches. So obviously, if I do 6 stitches at a size 1, they're going to be much closer together than 6 stitches at a size 5. So that's another place where you can get adjustment. What I'm going to do is we're going to put this little ratchet at the front on 1, so it'll do one pleat every 1 stitch, and we'll put this depth on about halfway, and then I can just show you. Let's get a strip of fabric here. So I'm going to stitch a little bit on 1, then I'll put it up to 6, and then I'll put it up to 12.
Settings.
See the difference. There are guides here on the back of the foot that you can thread your fabric through, or even if you want to attach ribbons and gather up the ribbon, you can thread through different guides. The main thing is that you want to put your fabric in between these 2 plates that are on the bottom. There's one plate that sits on top that's got all these sharp little spikes on it. I don't know if we can see. I pull this, if you want to, like, you've got this bottom plate, and then there's this top plate here. So we're wanting our fabric to go here in the middle between those 2 plates, and you should be able to see that one.
Just hold it steady up a bit. Yeah.
That one there, it's got some teeth, and what they'll do is that will grab the fabric and push it through to form those little pleats. So as long as your fabric goes in between those 2, that will create the pleat. And if you want to add flat fabric on, like to make a little seam, that would go here on top of the 2 little plates. So, but I'll show you all of that. So I'm just sliding my fabric in between those 2 plates, and I'm just going to push it in past my needle. So there we are, all set up, ready to sew. And this is just on 1 layer of fabric. My foot is down. I'm on a stitch of about 2.4 length, so it's my standard straight stitch, and we're just going to should be able to see this. So every time it does a stitch, it is pleating a little pleat of fabric. So this will do more like a little gather. I'm stitching quite slow, so you can see you can fasten up. But if we sew slow, you'll be able to see it working. So that's on 1. I'm now going to adjust my ratchet over to 6. And now we should see that it will stitches 6 times. And then it does its little pleat. You can see there how it's doing now, a little pleat every 6 stitches. And if I want this to be slightly closer together or further apart, this is where I would adjust my stitch length. And if we go over to 12, then you'll see that it will do 12 stitches before it does a little pleat. So that was just on a medium sort of depth that it is doing the pleat, but this one is just showing you the difference with the ratchet on the top. So here we have 1 pleat every 1 stitch, 1 every 6, and then here's my 12 gap. So now if I put that on every 1, and then we're going to adjust. So I'm going to take my depth all the way to like the highest that it can go, the furthest. And then we'll get another scrap of fabric and we'll show you this one. Get my fabric in. Okay. So I've got it on every 1 stitch, it'll do a pleat, and I've got it at the moment on the highest sort of depth. So it's going to push the most amount in. On 1, yep. I'm going to sec. Let me adjust this. I had it a little bit too low. I have to have it on the number 1 setting. Okay, that's good. So at the moment it's just pulling in a tiny little bit. So we're going to take it here. So now it's just doing a tiny little pleat, and then I'm just going to I'm keeping on adjusting the screw just so you can see the difference in the depths that it's doing. There we go. Oops, I keep screwing it the wrong way. And we're just going to screw it up a little bit more. And then we'll go a little bit more. This is pretty much the maximum that it will do. Okay. So you can sort of see here, if I hold this out, these ones here is just like a little tiny, I don't know if you can see. That's okay. So these are just a little tiny gather. There isn't really much of an actual pleat there. Whereas if I go back up this end where it was doing more, you can see that there's quite a lot of fabric being pushed in the back there. So that's adjusting the amount of sort of pleating that it will do. I'm going to go to the center up here because then we might be able to see this a little bit better. So I've got a 6 stitch at the top. So every 6 stitches. At the moment, it's on the deepest that it will go. So it will do a really large sort of pleat. And then we'll take it to about halfway. And what you can do is, if you've got a foot like this, is just make up some little samples, and you could write on them that this one was 6 stitches at a depth of 3, or 4 stitches at a depth of, or 12 stitches at a depth of 8. So there we go. That gives you a much better view of what it does. So this one here, you can see there's quite a large amount of fabric being pushed in under to make the pleats. Whereas when it comes up here and I've turned it down, there's just a tiny little bit of fabric being pushed in there. Now, the other thing that I love using this for is for attaching one layer to another layer. So here we have, let's just adjust this. I've got one layer that's pleated up that's sitting onto a second layer. So I'm going to show you this. We put our one that we want to get pleated is going in between those two plates, but the one that is going to be not pleated is going on top of that little finger with all the spikes on it. If you've got a little awl or something, that will help you to thread your fabrics down. Just have to get it under the foot. Okay, make sure this one is under the foot properly. It's just popped out. Let me do it again. To make sure that one goes under there. This one goes on top. It's always when I'm trying to do something on camera to get it right. There we go. Okay, we're all set up now. So I've got this layer underneath is between the fingers. That's going to get pleated. The one on top is on top of the little fingers, so it won't get pleated. I'm going to stitch, and you'll see it will do its little pleat underneath there. And I'm just keeping both these lines, rows of fabric, lined up so that my needle is catching both of them. And this is a very quick and easy way then to start making like a skirt that's got multiple layers on it. And I've got some samples here to show you. Just move these out of the way. So that little thing I can show you here is you can make a skirt similar to this. So this is just using a jelly roll, and we've done the little bit of the gather on each row, and that way each row just gets larger and larger and larger as you sew, but it's just all done with the single layer of flat fabric and then the piece underneath being gathered or pleated on. And you can make that makes a cute little skirt, like a gypsy sort of style skirt. That. The project that you would have got last month is for a Christmas in July, so you could be on top of making your things now for December. But obviously you could do any sort of fabric on this to, oops, my little microphone, I didn't. But the little mic, I clipped it off. So you could obviously do any fabric on this, and these ones are pleated individually, and then there's a bit of you could put ribbon or a little bit of fabric that's on there on the top one to cover the raw edges. But these are then we have overlocked these particular ones, and then they're stitched onto the little tea towel. But you could do that even if you're, say, upcycling a skirt or the bottom of some jeans or something, is that you could easily make these little pleated sections and then stitch them onto, like, yeah, the bottom of a skirt or onto the sleeve of a jacket, to sort of dress something up with whatever sort of fabric you like. Here's another little dress that that we've done some pin tucking and decorative stitching down the little bodice, and then the bottom is got the little pleats to attach it. And this is where sometimes on some dresses you might have like a flat section in the front, or sometimes a flat section on either side, and you want all the gathers to be in the middle. That's when you can put the ruffler on zero, like onto the little star. Do you know, just straight stitch here, gather all in the middle, and then straight stitch at the end. And oops, my mic's gone again. It's precariously clipped on to the sewing machine, the mic. So here's another little one. This one was done on the overlocker. It's actually an overlocker project, but it's using the gathering attachment on overlocker, but it's the same sort of technique, I suppose, where you have a gathered piece onto a flat piece. This was a project done couple of years ago,
18.
yeah, 3 or 4 years ago. It's the it's for a little apron.
You can search apron.
Yeah, if you search for apron, and it was the gathering attachment, but if you want, you could utilize the ruffler, but this same pattern, and that makes a cute little faux skirt sort of apron. So there's a couple little projects there. So that's sort of all the little samples that I've got. If you've got any further questions or you want to get another little demo on this foot, you can. We back to that one? Or...
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to, yeah, thank you for joining us today. If you want to have a little bit more of a demonstration of that, you can contact your local Janome store. And if they've got that in stock, you can go in and they can show you it. And as I said, just take your model number in, and that they'll make sure that they have the right one for you for your machine. And it makes some great little, much easier than sewing rows of stitches and trying to pleat things up yourself, that it just does the little pleat all the time. So thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month.